Hello everyone, hello everyone in the room. I'm going to sit awkwardly here because that is.
Hi, sorry.
Join. There is a seat at the front of the class.
There is, but you don't have to be gentrified. It's silent.
Terrible. So hopefully, it will be beautiful. I know some of you, I don't know all of you, so for those of you who know me, hi. For those of you who don't know me yet, good luck. So my name is Dermot Daly. I primarily these days work as a director and a dramaturg and a lecturer, and I try and be a decent partner and father. But given that I'm not with my son tonight, you can work out whether or not I've been successful. The plan for tonight is just to throw some ideas at all of you that will hopefully spark some ideas that we can throw back. The aim of this session is not for me to sit here and talk for an hour and a half, because the knowledge that you need is in the room and not in this one person here. And that should go for every room that we're always in, I think. So my aims, and I'm going to run through this. So I've got this PowerPoint thing happening so that I keep on track. But also there are some exercises later on which will be up on the screen, which will allow you to kind of go at your own pace. Please do not stand on ceremony. If anything is said that you don't understand, this obviously goes to people on Zoom as well. If anything is said that you don't understand, or you want some more clarity on, or you want to disagree with, or agree with, or throw something in, please just speak. We're not at school. We really aren't at school. So those are the four things that I'd like to try and get through this evening, which an understanding of what a duologue is. We're going to write some skeleton scenes, so I hope everybody got something to write with. We're going to have a look at creating characters, and then we're going to think about setting and settings and how those things impact on the things that we've done previous. And then at the end of the session, hopefully if there's any time left, if there's any general questions to me, to Adam, to other people in the room, then hopefully we'll leave some time for that. Does that all sound doable? Yeah. Zoom folk, we good? Cool. I'm going to try my level best, Zoom people, to remember that you're there, because I'm really conscious that whenever we do these hybrid things, we tend to focus on the people that are in front of us. But you are in front of us. You are here vicariously all around the country. I would all around the country. In fact, Sonnet, let's do this because we can. Where have we all travelled in from?
Leeds.
Leeds. What? Yes. Leeds.
Manchester.
Leeds.
Sheffield.
Guys, Leeds.
Leeds. Stockport.
Stockport. Well, that's a bit of a mish. Okay, let's go online. I'm gonna pronounce your name incorrectly, so correct me. Is it Julia?
It is Julia, yeah.
I must admit, Adam did whisper in my ear. Where are you, Julia?
I'm in Manchester.
Okay, Susan, where are you?
Sheffield.
Wee, Jilly.
Lancaster.
Oh, Hannah.
I'm in Manchester.
Jolene.
I'm Sheffield.
And Claire. Claire might be there. She might not be. Claire is in Zoom land. Let's just say that. So does that all make sense in terms of what I'd like to try and cover this afternoon, this evening, wherever we're at. So, what is a duologue? I've put 4 things up there. Is a duologue 2 people talking? Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah.
Yeah? I would argue that the clue is in the name, duo meaning 2, log meaning to speak. 3 people talking, is that a trilogue? Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, 12 scenes. Thing about duologues then, do the 2 people need to talk to each other? Oh, yes, we've got a yes, we've got a no. Why do you think it's a yes?
Because it could be some kind of one-on-one within it, maybe
walk away physical from the character.
Yeah.
It could be reminiscing about something that's happened in the past. Thinking it could be just actions and in the same scene and they're reacting to each other but not necessarily words. I mean, not like the not necessarily, but on stage or in performance space at the same time. You could get the same kind of-
Yeah, yeah, because they're in duologue, they're talking to each other. You said no.
They're both talking, but they're not talking to one another. It's kind of like two modes.
There's two people and they're not talking to each other, it's two monologues. I'll take that.
Sorry.
No,
I would just assume that there's some form of interaction, so maybe they're not talking, they connect.
so some form of interaction and they're connected, that makes a duologue. That makes sense talking to each other, and because if it's a duologue, they might not be in the same time and space, but they are both in the same scene. Well done. So with the words. There's a thing between duologue and dialogue. Dialogue is talking to each other. Talking to each other. A duologue can be talking to each other, or two people talking in the same space or around the same idea. And those two words often get interchangeably mixed around. I'm a massive pedant for language, so welcome to my pedantry. So we've spoken about whether we I don't think they have to. I don't think a duologue has to be in the same space. You can have a duologue across, you can have a dialogue across time, or across worlds, or I don't know, across dimensions, if we're thinking kind of science fiction-y type stuff. What therefore would you say are the differences between a duologue and a dialogue? And I might have given some of that away already.
Call and response. You can, dialogue.
When you say call and response, what do you mean?
I suppose a direct response to a previous person said in some way, reaction of some kind.
So to frustrate that a little bit, if that is the case, A is saying something and B is responding, in a way that kind of becomes I think the wonderful thing about playwriting and the wonderful thing about writing is that we need to understand the rules to then break them. Just because someone has said, this person here has said a duologue is this and a dialogue is that, doesn't mean that I'm right. It means that that's my point of view. And if you want to challenge that in your writing, then by all means challenge it. And then we can talk about whether or not it was successful by your measure of success. Because remember, the measure of success is your measure of success. There is absolutely no point writing another Sarah Kane play because she's written them. You know, there's no point writing another Debbie Tucker Green play because hopefully she will write more. And also, nobody in this room is Debbie Tucker Green, and I hope nobody in this room is Sarah Kane because that would be weird. Two female writers. Interesting. Cool. Let's move on. There we go. Stephen Jeffries. Has anyone heard of Stephen Jeffries? Stephen Jeffries' book, Playwriting, is, I would argue, if you are a writer, it should be the book that is in your library. In terms of like writing for stage, it doesn't give you everything, but it gives you pointers towards everything. And again, it's his way of doing it. But understanding our way of doing it allows you to find your way of doing it. So I pulled out these three quotes from that book. We're all pretty much on the same sort of page. There is a tendency for stage dialogue to be all question and answer. Spoke about that earlier, didn't we? A character asks a question and another character answers. That rarely happens in real life. I think that only happens if you're a bus driver, right? Or some sort of transactional thing. But even when you go to the supermarket, it's not necessarily just transactional, right? So that's something to bear in mind. Another factor to remember. Another factor to remember about ordinary speech is that when people are ostensibly talking to someone else, what they're actually doing is working out what they're going to say next and how they can get that into a conversation. I'm 99% certain we have all had conversations, often with, I'm saying this as a parent of a 10-year-old, right? But often with my little one, where he's just waiting for me to stop talking. So he can then say something, which often doesn't link at all to what it is that was being said. I'm just going to pause for a second. Are we going to change?
Yeah, we're just going to change into that. We might lose you briefly, and then we'll get you back into the room if that's the case. Thank you very much for bearing with us.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No,
And then the third quote on there: if you're writing a play in which you are trying to emphasize the difference between your characters in terms of their psychology or background, how they speak and how they respond to each other is very important. So if we think about those three quotes, if we put them all together, the idea that question and answer is not something that happens in real life. So Jeffries suggests that we should avoid that. He suggests that when one person is talking, the other person potentially is thinking about what it is that they're going to say next. There is a point in every single line where that starts to happen. If your character is only thinking about what they're going to say next, essentially what's happening is two monologues. But often character A will, of the 10 words they're going to say the first 5 words, and character B, in the second 5 words, will be thinking about how they're responding. Which is why often when you speak to people in real life and or look at play scripts, often the first clause of the sentence that is spoken is the one that is responded to. It's the reason why when someone's being really nasty, the last word, if it's a swear word, is the last word as opposed to the first one. Because it tends to go under the radar, because someone's already thinking about responding to the first bit of the sentence. Does that make sense? And then obviously the last thing that Jeffrey says, just to tie these things together, is thinking about their psychology and their background, how they speak and how they respond to each other. Have you got a character that is only ever listening to the first word? Have you got a character that is listening to the whole sentence and then giving a pause and then thinking about responding? In a very, very simple way, if you think, and I said this isn't school, but let's think about school. Think about writing 2 different types of student talking to a teacher. The student who is very diligent and wants to get everything right, will there normally be a gap between the end of the teacher talking and that student speaking, because they want to take everything in that's being said. If you've got a student that's a bit of a pain in the arse, they will tend to not allow the teacher to finish what they're saying because they're responding to the first thing they heard. Sometimes it might be like that to Ronnie's sketch, where they're actually responding to the thing before the thing that was just said. Yeah? Again, that's who Ronnie's speech literally subverts all of this. That's why it works. And that's why we understand it as well. Because thinking about it logically, answering the question before the question that's just been posed, mentally is a bit of a head trick. But because we're always working in the past, there's that whole kind of scientific thing, right? We are always in the past. Because literally just now, me saying these words to you, you are in the past. These words are in the past. Because the sound has to travel from my face to your ears, and then your brain has to sort that out, sort out the sound waves, whatever, and turn it into something that could be words, and then another part of your brain works out what those words mean, and then another part of your brain works out what those words mean to you, and then another part of your brain thinks about how to respond. Yes, we're doing that all in milliseconds, but we all know in this room, quite literally everybody on Zoom is very clearly in the past, because there is going to be a delay on what I say to when it gets to them. Does that make sense? So thinking about dialogue and thinking about how those characters respond to each other, hold that in mind. Hold that in mind. What are we actually hearing? I would like to do some playing, because I said that what I'd like to do in the promo stuff for this that I'd like to, when we leave here, all of us have the stump for a new play. I'm going to take you through 3 exercises which will give you the basic, massive, ugly breeze blocks of something that might be beautiful. And I should say, I'm sure I'm amongst writers, so I'm sure you get this, but very, very rarely, if ever, is your first draft the best one. And those of us who have written before, you know that, yeah? It is that thing, there's a writer called Lisa Holdsworth, there's a Leeds-based writer, some of you might know her. Lisa says that her first draft always goes in the bottom drawer. It's a puke draft. It's everything out onto a page. Another writer friend of mine does the same thing, but what he then does is leaves it a couple of days and then rewrites the whole thing again without looking at the thing that's in the drawer, and then takes them both out and works out, well, what has stayed and what has gone. And often you'll find the stuff that you don't remember is the stuff your audience isn't going to remember, which is the stuff that needs to go. Mark Ravenhill, I can chant her on for days. Mark Ravenhill talks about when you write your first play, print it and get rid of the first 2 pages. Yeah? Because the first 2 pages are often, hello, George, how are you? I'm fine, Sarah. Where have you been today, George? I've been to the market. What happened at the market? Well, there was a monster and it killed me. If you start from, well, there was a monster and it killed me, I'm instantly invested. Why do I need to? I need to find out. But you've lost me if I'm just going, hi, Sarah, hi, George, and whatever. You know what I mean? Have a biscuit, have a cup of tea. This is your first exercise. And I'm going to throw 5 minutes up for this. I'll talk you through it and then take questions if there are any questions from folk on Zoom or folk in the room. I'm going to ask you to do this in 5 minutes. All scenes can essentially be stripped down to one really basic thing, or a couple of basic things, sorry. A character wants something, and another character may or may not be willing to give it to them. At the very base level, I would like a cup of tea. I don't want to make you a cup of tea. And see. Yeah? It's hackneyed and awful. Don't do that. But every scene strips down to that. Any scene you like. I've said there it could be an object, a secret, some information, etc., etc., etc. Yeah? First 10 minutes of every James Bond film is exactly the same. It does that. We find out who the villain is, we find out what the task is, we then find out what tools James, you know, the old James Bond films were always wrapping up from the last film, him waking up somewhere exotic, him then being called back to London. So the call to action, if we're going to use those terms. The inciting incident, so-and-so's blown up a bridge somewhere. And then he goes and sees, is it Q that does all the gadgets? Yeah. Then he goes and sees Q and he gets his new watch and his new car. And then he goes off. Everything that we need is there. But that is it. Characters want something, they get it, they trying to get it, and another character trying to frustrate them. The scene I'd like us to write works around that basic setup. One character wants something, the other is unwilling to get it. To stick with the James Bond thing, James Bond wants a new watch, Q doesn't want to give it to him. Yeah? Because instantly now I'm thinking, why doesn't Q want to give it to him? And why does James Bond want that watch? And what is it about that watch that is important? Take a character you might have thought of, maybe a character that you've already written about, maybe a character that you've already written a play around or about. And then drop them in with another character that you've never thought of before. Think of the last person you saw as you walked to the theatre. Folk on Zoom, think about the bus driver or the train driver or that driver in that car this afternoon that was an absolute, finish that sentence in the word of your choice. I'd like to write these characters talking to each other. I don't need to worry about names. I don't need to worry about stage directions. I don't need to worry about a backstory or a history. I want you to write literally line for line for line for line for line. If it helps for your brain, then put a little dash to indicate that that's a new person talking, but literally just write dialogue. Okay? Just write 2 characters talking to each other. Don't stop to put character names in, no beats, no pauses, no silence, no stage directions, no picking up of things, no one knocking on the door, none of that nonsense, just pure dialogue. Does that make sense? And this will form the basis of the next two exercises. It doesn't have to be massively long. It doesn't have to be massively intelligent. It doesn't have to be highfalutin or high concept. It's literally just two people talking. One person wants something, the other person may or may not want to give it to them. Does that make sense in the room? Good. On Zoom, does that make sense? Thumbs up. That's your 5 minutes. If you'd like to put your pens down, the examination is up. It feels like that, doesn't it? How was that? How was that just writing? Who found that difficult? What did you find difficult about it?
You have the idea fast, that's right.
Okay. So-
If it's just some kind of style, I mean,
Cool. Does that resonate with other people in the room and on Zoom? Having an idea to start off with.
yeah, I think it's, well, for me, it's the fair of it. But, and that's, not having it fully formed because that, which is an excuse to not start, that kind of thing. But having an exercise like that, and just going, just writing, play, be free.
Yeah.
It's actually quite nice.
There's been some comments on the Zoom. Hannah says, loved it. Jolene said, really enjoyed it. It felt different. Jolene, what felt different about it?
It was just something I've never really done before with a brand new scene. Yeah.
It feels like that resonates with people for a lot of us, right? Anyone else want to chip in how that felt?
I was struggling not to overthink.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the things that you said before about like people responding to the first bit of the sentence, and I was like writing the sentence, and I was responding to the whole sentence rather than just so everything.
Did anybody get to a point where you could hear the characters talking? Took a little while for that to happen, right? But once that happened, did it feel easier to write?
Yeah, because you're more in the mind of the character responding as them rather than as my voice.
Trying to put something on them.
Yeah.
Julie on Zoom said she enjoyed the freedom of the task. Do you not feel free when you're writing normally, Julie?
Sometimes I get kind of like micro detailed. I want to kind of write in all the little stage directions, and I get kind of, it slows me down. I quite liked just doing the voices, and it just speeded me up and made it flow a bit. So thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I did work. Not gonna lie, that was all you. Susan said using a character I already had was helpful in knowing where to start. I hear that, I get that. Again, just to reiterate, I'm throwing ideas at you. None of this is as it should be. And the thing I say to students all the time is please try whatever you're offered. Even if someone says, this is the way it should be, if you try it and it doesn't work for you, then it does not work. End of story. Like, please ignore anyone, including me, who says this is the only way to do it. Apart from making a brew. If you make a brew incorrectly, I will judge you. And I don't even drink tea. So that's our skeleton scene. That's something we're going to hold on to. The next thing I would like to do, and this kind of addresses some of what you've said, is our second scene. A little bit more time to do this. And some of you are going to hate me because you're going to have to rewrite some of this. All right, but keep the skeleton scene you just wrote. That's your beginning point. However long, or however short, however detailed, however undetailed, that's your beginning point. Now I want us to throw something at it. So it can be a physical thing, it could be the thing that they want or something completely unrelated. So going back to my James Bond thing, maybe Q gives him the watch and literally throws it at his head. Right? And if you're really stuck, make it a beach ball. And the reason why I say a beach ball is because very rarely does anyone write any of these set on a beach. And a beach ball is just such a random thing. You know, it's either that or a cuddly toy. Generation game for those of us of a certain vintage. So that thing can be there at the beginning, it can arrive halfway through, it can turn up at the end. But the idea is that it's there and the dialogue you've just written has to somehow relate to it. Yeah? So if there's a beach ball that's just in the middle of the room, when we go back to my James Bond scene, my first line might have been, Q, I need a watch. And then my reiteration of that in this scene might be Q, I need a watch. Why is there a, forget it, I need a watch. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that beach ball is there from the beginning. If the beach ball just magically appears at some point in the middle of the scene, why is that, where has that come from? It's not changing the course of the scene, but it's changing how they respond to what is happening. And it can be anything, right? Don't write a brand new scene. That's the important thing to know. Don't throw away what you've just done. Far too many writers I know write a first draft and then they, if I'm doing some drama surgery work, they'll throw me a first draft and then they'll send a second draft and the beginning and the end is exactly the same, but everything in the middle is completely changed. And my note is always, why have you sent me a new play? The reason why you started writing something, there is a reason for you doing that. You might not understand why, but just getting rid of it doesn't allow you to develop it. This whole thing about new drafts. Keep redrafting, keep refining. Yeah? It's sharpening a pencil. That's a nice analogy. I'll keep that one. Does that all make sense what I'm asking you to do? So to rewrite the scene that you've just written, think about something physical that you're going to throw at it, something tangible. A spanner, a beach ball, a window opening. I don't know, a pigeon landed in the middle of the living room. What is going on with my brain? I don't know. The lights turning on, the lights turning off. A heel breaking. Yeah. But throw something physical at it and think about how, as you're rewriting, think about how your characters respond to that whilst not deviating from what you've already written. So there'll be a little side path away from what you've written, but I don't want you to go in a completely different direction. If it's a beach ball, you didn't start off in Sainsbury's and ended up at Scarborough. Yeah? Does that all make sense? Everyone in the room okay with that? Everyone on Zoom okay with that?
So still no stage direction, so nothing like that. They just respond to it with the dialogue.
Just responding to the thing, yeah, no stage directions at all. We might come to that. Because essentially what's interesting here, just as a side note, those of you who said it was difficult because you didn't start with an idea and it's that idea of refining, what I want to offer to you is the idea that you don't have to do all of the work before you start writing. It is possible to do it the other way around, to do the writing and then do the work afterwards. Because sometimes if you're trying to create something, don't get me wrong, if you've been commissioned to write a noir, then research it, do that stuff. But if you're just writing for writing's sake, to write something new, allow your brain to do what it wants to do. Don't try and force it into a box, because your commissioning producer will try and do that anyway. And those of you who've gone through those processes will know that sometimes that is painful. Yeah? The point of tonight, the point of writing, I think, is for you to find your voice, whatever that means. And that's written down a lot in theatre. It doesn't always mean anything. Yeah. So let's take 10 minutes to do this. It might be slightly less than 10 minutes. That is just under 10 minutes. I've robbed you about 20 seconds.
And that active silence. It's sort of you can hear it. Kind of creative concentration.
Do you know what's lovely about these sessions is the idea just to have focused time to just write. I'm really envious of people who can go to coffee shops and write. I can't because there's too much happening. But then sometimes I can't sit at home and write because there's too much that needs to be done. Like just finding that time where you're not in one of the, and it's just, you're just here to write us. I find that really quite almost meditative, isn't it? How was that as an additional thing to add on to that skeleton scene? You're looking really happy with yourself.
I just, well, I am brilliant. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, false modesty. No, I'm really enjoying it. And I went back and I knew exactly what I was going to do. And then I made a joke without meaning to. So hilarious. Wow, I didn't get to do that. And then it just linked without meaning to. Anyway, and then I really want to put some directions in. So hard. I might have left a little gap if what's coming. But yeah, there's bits that I want to.
I might lie to you. Works as a director, right? 90% of a director's job is lying. Or is it? Aha! That's a producer's job. Producer's lying. Not all the time. Says lie. Says lie. That's literally their job. And I'm going to stop talking now because I will get myself in trouble. How do I feel, folks? I can see there's comments from Zoom people. I'll say this in 2 seconds. How did it feel in the room?
Yeah, I felt like it was revitalising the scene a little bit for me. I think adding some like urgency to it with the object had yeah.
I think it's a fun exercise because if I threw all of this at you to start off with, you'd have been planning what the object was before you thought about the dialogue. And you'd be thinking about, you're already doing it, thinking about the stage directions, but that's creeped in as opposed to where you started. Does that make sense? And it feels to me that if you're thinking about stage direction, then what you've written has told you where it needs to go, as opposed to you trying to force it into a box. On Zoom, Jilly has said it was a fantastic, energized the scene. Scene. Susan said great, pure melodrama. Added conflict and action, Jolene. Hannah helped to forge some action. Talk to me through that thought process. That's a beautiful use of words, I think.
Thanks. No, it did help just having something. You know, your beach ball idea was really nice, and I just thought something unexpected, and yeah, that helped me. I had a light bulb kind of bursting on the wall, and it worked within the kind of dynamic of the two characters, but was, you know, unexpected even for me, I think, and then it helped to create a bit of action and movement rather than just two people talking to each other.
I quite like the idea of forging. Just your use of the word forge. Again, me being a pedant with words, right? Maybe being the grammar type wasn't that one. But a forge tends to be where different things go in and one thing comes out. And the thing that comes out is normally better than better or more useful or very different to the sum of its parts. Just that use of forge, Hannah, has just set my brain off. I'll come back in a second. Right. So I'm racing because I'm aware that we might run out of time. What we've done so far is we've started with the two characters. So we started on the inside of the circle. Then we've moved out a little bit and thrown something in. I want to zoom out slightly more than that. And I want us to think about location. I lied, we're not going to put scene directions in, stage directions in, because I'm a horrible human. That might be skeleton scene 4.
Stage directions into the tree.
No.
Yes, we will.
You're cheating yourself.
And get D-.
Why could you not do it? That's interesting. Why could you not do it?
Because it was so visual to me that it was kind of so integral. It didn't seem One, two, three. The top one. Oh.
I think I wrote some dreadful dialogue to overcompensate for the lack of scene directions.
But then once you've done all of this, then draft 2 is where you take that out and you put that in. The reason why I'm saying that's okay, because essentially what's happening there is the story is telling you what it needs and you're listening to it. The reason why I'm trying to be strict on don't add them in, because if you can tell me that you want to add them in and you haven't, it means you don't need to yet. But with your story, you said the word visual. So I would imagine, I don't know any of your work, but I would imagine that from what you've just said, your writing tends to start from a picture of something in your mind and you write to that vision. So that's your way and that's your way of working. Yeah, as I say, try something. If it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work. But out of that comes something that might. Yeah?
Yeah.
Last thing I'm going to do, it says 10 minutes. We're not going to do 10 minutes because we will run out of time if we do. Location. To quote Kirsty and Phil, is it? Location is a really amazing way to develop characters. Throw characters in a place where they don't belong is a useful thing to see what comes out of them. Let's go back, let's think back to that Stephen Jeffries idea of let's go back and actually find it. The last bullet point, if you're trying to emphasize the difference between your characters and their psychology or background, how they speak and how they respond to each other is very important. If you throw different characters into different locations, it allows that psychology and that difference to become really powerful. For example, if you went to a really fancy restaurant, you know, where they had like 12 different knives and forks. I don't know those places, give me a spoon. But a character who feels at ease there, that tells you a lot about their background. A character who feels ill at ease there, it tells you something about their background. Or it might tell you something about their feeling for being in that particular place. So they might be used to fine dining in inverted commas, but actually maybe that restaurant is the restaurant where they had that fish dish and it made them ill. Yeah. Or it might be at that restaurant where they found out their football team lost the trophy. Yeah. So think about location. And throwing them in landscapes or in places and seeing how they behave is useful. And the landscapes might be completely not what you want to talk about. Yeah. So, Hannah, you spoke about a light bulb, right? I've lost Hannah. Hannah on Zoom, have you got?
Sorry, say again. Sorry, I didn't catch
that.
that.
Spoke about a light bulb.
Yes, yeah, I had a light bulb explode on the wall.
Cool. So, the light bulb exploded on the wall. What about if that light bulb was on the wall of a garden?
Yep.
It throws you in a different location, right? And it then gives you something else. Sometimes throwing characters in ridiculous situations is a fun thing to do. It might throw some things about them that you can take to more appropriate locations for the play that you want to write. Basically, you're stress testing your characters. Where do they break? How far do they go before they don't resemble the character that you heard by the end of the first skeleton scene? Find the edges of the characters, because what we're looking for in any sort of drama, it isn't the characters that we're interested in, it's the tension between them. I'm sure we've all been to theatre shows where there's been a silence held between two characters. And that silence sometimes is more exciting and more interesting and more engaging than what they said before or after, because we're reading the tension between them. When a character slowly walks across the stage, that's tension. Yeah? So it's thinking about that sort of stuff. Think about location, can be real, can be imaginary. So Hannah, I'm going to pick on you.
Sorry, can I just pick up what you said there?
Of course you can.
When you just said when a character walks slowly across the stage, that's a stage direction. How do you present that in terms of dialogue without actually presenting a stage direction when you're writing? How do you indicate that?
The absence of dialogue.
Okay.
So
Well, how do you present that in terms of, as a playwright, in terms of, you just, what, is that a pause or a silence? Because of what, how do you write that down?
Or it can be. It can be. You can say pause. You can say beat. You can say he walks towards him menacingly, or you can have character line X. Isn't it really nice today? And then literally have a space where there's nothing, the absence. And then character X then says, why are you walking towards me? Why are you here? Get out of my face. Because then what you told the reader is there's movement happening. There's movement that has happened there.
Yeah. Yeah, because is that better than a scene direction? Because
I'm going to say yes and I'm going to say no.
cool.
Because no, what I don't want to do is say that's the way to do it. It depends on what you're writing. And it depends on the invitation that you want to offer. I'll be really honest with you. I read for a couple of playwriting prizes. I'm reading for one at the minute, which shall remain nameless, because what I'm about to say might get me in trouble. But what I've found and it's not just this one actually, it's reading in the last 4 or 5 years. It's a personal thing. I really, really despise reading someone who is directing the play from the stage. Do not direct the play from the stage. With my director's hat on, I won't touch it because you've given me no room to collaborate. And you must always remember that a play is a blueprint for action, not the action itself. And sometimes if you offer something to an actor, to a director, to a producer, to a dramaturg, they might throw something in that heightens your idea. I've seen actors take monologues that on paper I've got an idea of what it is, and then an actor will perform it in a way and they'll bring something to it that I didn't even know existed, and that is the way it should always have been played. But if the writing was too prescriptive, then the actor has no space to play. Yeah? We call them plays. We forget the meaning of the word play. Play. It's not a work. We go to work, and then we play when we're not at work. So a play should be a play.
So 3 words just popped into my head that sum up that. It's the idea of show, don't tell.
Yeah.
So show what you're doing, but don't tell anything.
Because in real life, someone doesn't. If there's an argument between 2 characters, right? In real life, someone isn't going to stand up and say, I'm going to buff you on the nose. They don't. They just get up and do it. So why not, when you're writing it, just have them do it? Treat audiences with a level of respect. And I think, and this is me preaching, sorry. This is probably a televisual thing, because so many of us, and there's so much more writing about writing for screen than there is writing for stage. Writing for screen, my God, every minute thing is there, because it has to be. But when you're writing for screen and it says the character picks up their cup of tea and takes a sip while looking at character X, what you're telling me in that is something's going to happen. You can't do that on stage. Yeah? But what you can do is say, pause. And then give the line afterwards. And that allows a director, a dramaturg, an actor to fill that pause with something.
Do you think that differs if it's comedy, in terms of, in order to deliver this specific line, an action might come with that? Would that be okay to put that in the stage directions in order to make it funny, if that makes sense?
I'm going to give the same answer. I'm going to say yes and no.
Okay.
If the physical action is where the punchline is, then yes.
Okay.
Here's an option. Do it both ways. So write it with the action and write it without the action, and then give it to 2 different people. So give each version A and version B to person A and person B, and see if it lands. Because if the version without the physical action doesn't land, then it needs it. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Yeah.
Again, I'm reticent to say, here's the knife, this is what it is. Because I'm not a gatekeeper, or at least I don't want to be. And I think sometimes the problems with learning about theatre and storytelling is that sometimes we follow people down rabbit holes and we do what it is that they do. And I'll tell you this for absolute freedom, for free. When I read for reading competitions, sometimes I can tell either who has taught that person or what they absolutely adore reading. Sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's a terrible thing. I go back to Sarah Kane. I adore Sarah Kane. I think she's one of the finest writers. I try when I write to avoid reading any Sarah Kane before I start writing something because I don't want to fall into that trap because I cannot do what she did. But some people actually might be able to take that and run with it and take it somewhere else. I'm really reticent. I know this is me sitting on the fence, but I'm really reticent to say yes, no. My offer is try it. Always try it. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you find out it doesn't work, but that's not a bad thing. Yeah. But as I say, it's a pet peeve for me of directing from the page. So let me read it. Let me see the story. We're going to have less than 10 minutes now because I'm waffling, but we've chatted and that's cool, I hope. Let's say 5 minutes. Find a location, can be real, can be imaginary, it could be the seaside, it could be Asda, it could be a spaceship. I don't know. But only you, the writer, knows that location, the characters don't. See how that allows you to see the scene differently. So going back to Hannah's idea with the light bulb smashing, I'm assuming it was in a room, in a house, in a building somewhere, right? But if you hold in your mind, Hannah, maybe that's an outside light in a garden somewhere, the characters don't need to know that, but you do, and now you can think about, well, how is that going to change that atmosphere? And do you know what? You might do it and go, yeah, that's poo, it doesn't work. But again, you know it doesn't work. And there might be a seed of something in there that you go, actually, that's interesting. I'm going to follow that rabbit hole on every second, third, fourth draft. Does that all make sense in terms of location? So think of a location, throw your characters in there, see what happens. Yeah, I'm going to say 5 minutes. And then I'm going to blaze through the rest of this. Half of the time that I would have allotted for this. How has that shifted stuff? Let's go to Zoom first. How has that shifted stuff for folk on Zoom? Just unmute and talk to us.
I definitely got a new location. I really struggled with the outdoor thing, but I did it because I already had such a clear idea of location in my mind as being just a home because of who the characters are and what they want from each other. But it forced me to put it somewhere different, which is really nice. And it's less like domestic now, and it's, you know, and even the character has a different like job and role now because of that. So I found it.
Do you like this new version better than the old version?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were going to say no. Either answer would have been great, right? Because if you like it more, then you found something else. If you liked it less, then you hit upon the right thing to start off with.
Yeah.
It's about challenging your preconceptions, right?
Yeah.
Other folk on Zoom before I come to the room? I think everybody's happy in Zoom now. It's good. In the room, how did we feel? How did that feel?
Certainly made it more interesting.
Okay. Is that interesting or interesting?
It would be more interesting for an audience, I think, to sort of, oh wow, I'm in this situation.
Who's your audience?
People are watching.
But who are they?
I don't know.
This is me challenging you because you said it'd be more interesting for an audience, and I asked you who's the audience, and you can't tell me. So how can you write for an audience that you've not thought about? Maybe your audience should always be you to start off with. What gets you going? Because it will, hopefully we're all human, at some point it will level out with somebody else.
It made it more interesting to run.
There we go. I like that we did one. But do you see what I mean? I hate to be kind of hard on that, but that notion of I'm writing for an audience, who's your audience?
Yeah.
You know? If you had a definite audience in mind, great. You know, I'm watching a parody of TikTok videos for 12-year-olds, great.
I'm not.
I actually don't think anybody should. Minecraft already exists. The movie, that is, the game, whatever. Anyway, I digress. To make it more interesting, it made you potentially think about an audience, but my kickback to you is think about yourself.
Yeah, it's more interesting to write.
Oh, good.
Because it's taken out of like what would be like a normal context, and then you've got to then consider all these other factors which will affect what is happening in that situation, which then makes it more interesting to write.
Because what you've done is you've given yourself more colours in your colour palette to play with. Yeah,
that's very good.
And like the idea of kind of starting off with, I need to plan. Who in this room, I'm guilty of this, who in this room, when you sit down to write something new, meticulously plans everything and then writes? I do. And often I get halfway through and go, this is rubbish. Because you start to write with a very definite idea, and what you've done is you've stopped yourself doing that and looking outwards. You essentially push yourself into looking inwards and narrower and narrower and narrower. That does not make for interesting drama. Because the narrower your drama is, yes, I'll come to see you in a minute. This is banging. The narrower your drama is, the less tension you're going to have. The less tension you're going to have in what you're writing, but the less tension you're going to have between you and the writing.
You think that's partly to do with between writing TV and writing the theatre? And then the TV, there is an awful lot of like, well, panic, yeah, ability down like teaching, that's
essentially. It's the reason why I can tell you exactly. I did this, and I really wish I'd have thought about this before tonight, but I did a lecture a couple of years ago, and I worked out in front of a bunch of students the formula for a James Bond film. And there is a formula, right? It always starts off with mild peril. You always think James is going to die. And at the end of the film, he always ends up with something that he wants. Up until Daniel Craig, or maybe slightly before, it was always with a semi-clad woman, and now it's something else, right? In the middle, there's going to be an explosion or something involving an automobile in which he's just about going to get away. The villain is always going to have some sort of, and it's a bit dodge and it's not right, but the villain's always going to have some sort of deformity. He's going to be different. He's going to be weird. Literally, you can go through a James Bond film and tick them up. It doesn't make James Bond films bad, but it means I know what I'm going to get. It's like watching a Marvel film, right? I know what's going to happen, but the joy is watching it happen. You know, and that's no shade. Shakespeare did it. The greatest playwright of all time. But Shakespeare did it. Romeo and Juliet, I'm with you. Romeo and Juliet, the prologue for Romeo and Juliet literally tells you what happens. What's the point of me watching the next couple of hours? You've told me. But it's the thrill of seeing it play out. I think the lovely thing about theatre is it can throw you anywhere. Film can. I watch quite a lot of independent film and kind of foreign film, so basically non-English film. Because a lot of non-English film, non-English speaking film, non-Anglophonic film is not hemmed in by the structures that make for a good piece of drama. I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying I like variety. I'm not always going to have chips, because my wife would kill me. So my collection to be fair. Susan on Zoom has said, it's given me a new idea. Bang in. Jilly, Susan, that is literally what I wanted to finish this session with. You having a new idea, something to play with. Jilly has said, changing the location really affected the power balance between the characters. Susan agrees. Again, power balance between characters. What is power balance? Power balance is about tension. Yeah. One of the best stories you could ever tell, potentially, is a character that doesn't want to tell their boss to do one at the beginning of the play, and a character that walks into the boss's office and turns the table over and walks out at the end. And the journey between the two is the tension between those two poles. Don't write that, I'm having that, that's my new thing. That sounds banging. Does that all make sense? I'm gonna rush, I'm afraid, because I want to throw something. I'm not gonna get through everything, but I want to throw a couple of things at you. Not literally, because that's not the way we play. I want you to be able to make something yours. All right, so we've got these characters. Here are some questions or pointers potentially to help you develop basic character study. All right, and you might want to do this retroactively with the characters that you've written today. So thinking about describing their personality in 5 to 10 adjectives. Thinking about what do they look like? And you can be as detailed or as vague as you like. Yeah? You can talk about what their hair looks like, how they've done their makeup, what shoes they wear, how tall they are. Or you could just say they're about this tall and they've got arms. Like, whatever. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? Would they have gone to Beyonce or would they have gone to Robbie Williams this week? Are they a Taylor Swift fan or do they think she's the spawn of Satan? Like, where does it sit? Favorite music? Favorite music's a really interesting one for me. When I write, if I'm writing character-y type stuff or if I'm working with a playwright on their play, I will often ask for a playlist or I'll often build a playlist. So when I'm reading their play, that playlist can play just gently behind me, but in the room that I'm in, because it allows me to enter that room. As an actor, before every show that I've ever done, there is a playlist for every character I've ever played, which I will listen to before I go on. And there are certain songs that even now, when I hear them, I am waiting backstage at a specific theatre, absolutely bricking it because I know I've not remembered my first night. Or it takes me to the prologue of that play. So when you walked in, that playlist that was playing takes me into that space. Knowing what your character's favourite music is will allow you to key into that character. Music's a weird thing, it touches different parts of the soul, I think. Don't have any empirical evidence of that. Don't quote me. Jolene likes creating playlists, or although I've probably taken too much time doing that. Yeah, Jolene, you sound like the sort of person like me that when we were told we had to do a revision for GCSEs and A-levels and whatnot, I in my revision timetable, there was timetable time to make the timetable. And I'm not the only person. I know I'm not the only person that did that. And then last one on your character studies, what is their dream? What's their super objective? What do they really want? For want of using a Stanislavskian term. What else did I want to throw at you? Stuff. I don't want to do that. We were going to do this. We were going to do character study, but we've run out of time. But this is a useful thing. If you're stuck, pick some random pictures from the internet and just make a character study. An acting exercise, we don't do it anymore. But acting exercise I used to do at drama school I used to work at was we go and sit near the local bus station and we just watch people. And then we'd come back and we create a character based on someone that we saw. I don't see why that should be any different for a writer. We bump into characters all the time. Yeah. Settings, we've kind of covered this, think about location, but think about where your characters might meet, when they might meet. Yeah, is it a fancy restaurant or is it McDonald's? Is it the middle of the day? Is it at 5 o'clock? Is it at 9 o'clock at night? What does that tell you about those characters? What might the setting say about the connection or the connections between those characters? Yeah, is it an office building? And if it's an office building, is it in the office or is it at the front desk? If it's at the front desk, that would suggest that someone works there and someone doesn't. If it's in the office, it suggests that they both do. If one is in the office and sat down in front of a computer and another one's walking in, that might tell you something about which one of those two characters cares about their job. Or which one of those characters has been there the longest. For you, describe your setting in detail. If it's helpful, draw it. I gave some feedback to a writer very, very recently, who'd written a piece where the character is in a toilet cubicle. And I couldn't see it because the writer hadn't described it in enough detail for me to see that toilet cubicle that we're in. Same writer today, actually, a couple of hours ago, sent me an email with a picture of the toilet cubicle type thing that they were aiming for. And the minute I saw it, everything then made sense. Give me that detail.
Did the person not be put stage direction a toilet cubicle?
Okay.
No, sing direction.
Well, stop it. This was a cold kind of drama stage thing. They said a toilet cubicle. Now, I'm a bloke. I don't go into women's toilet cubicles. That's not my bag, right? And they were talking about these cubicles that, and toilet cubicles that I've been in don't tend to have a sink in them as well as a dryer, unless in a restaurant. It was meant to be in a restaurant, right? So I was like, well, I don't quite understand, how is this person finishing using the toilet and then drying their hands whilst on the phone and there's nobody else coming in? But if the writer had said, it is this sort of cubicle, it is fully enclosed, it's larger than a standard cubicle, there is a sink towards the front of it. Do you know, maybe before you exit the door, there's graffiti all over the walls, the scene, it's all enclosed. Then I get, as I'm reading it, I've got a visual idea of where this is set. So I'm not thinking about imposing it, I'm seeing it. If you didn't want that level of detail, then just saying the toilet cubicle is fine. But because this cubicle is integral to the story, this character, not to give too much away for this writer, but this character goes to the toilet cubicle every time there's a crisis.
Is the whole scene set in the cubicle?
There's a series of scenes set in a cubicle. So every time we see this character, they come into the cubicle to go on the phone to discuss something. But it's really helpful for me as a reader to go, how much do I need to know about this cubicle? The cubicle tells me about the person, because the description of the cubicle tells me about the restaurant that they're in. And the restaurant that they're in tells me about their predilections, and it also tells me whether or not the conversations they're having are regular or irregular.
How does this square with your not wanting like an absence of stage directions at Dermot?
I'm not necessarily saying that I want an absence of stage directions, I want an absence of directing from the page.
But that's what the person you're reading is sort of saying. He's obviously got this image of this cubicle that's presented to you.
But there's a difference between having an image that hasn't been passed to me as a reader and directing the action within that cubicle.
Right.
I need to know where it is to understand how it is.
Right.
If that makes any sense. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
But yeah, like that set it. It might well be that you don't need to write the setting in that much detail. It can maybe come through the dialogue, but you need to know it in your head. And what's really interesting, this writer sent me this picture, and the minute I saw the picture, what I read made 100% sense, because it was in their head as they were writing it, but it wasn't in mine. There are scripts now, if we really wanted to, you know, this writer could have just put a picture of the toilet in and said it looks something like this. Again, there's no set formula to a script. If you think about it, the written word is about communicating. If I can understand what you're saying, then I'm golden. We're there. You know, I've got loads of places. There's 7 Killings of Kylie Jenner. That is a wild script to read. It's got emojis and all sorts of. Like Bullring Techno Makeout Jamz had emojis in it. It is, you know, there are scripts that I've read where literally it's a picture and then some words around that picture. I go back to my favourite playwright, Sarah Kane. Looking at the typography, the way that she writes some of her plays, tells you how it could work, or it gives you an indication of how it could work. And if you look at that on a Monday morning when you're really tired, when really awake, sorry, it might give you a different feeling than if you looked at it on a Friday night after a glass of rosé. Which is why I'm saying don't direct from the page. Have it as an open collaboration, but know where you're coming from, because that will then sit heavily. If something is written incredibly well, then you can't deviate from that story. The The substance script. I haven't seen the substance script, Jolene. I've seen the film. It's wild. Horrible. It's just a wild film. Right, we are over time. God damn it. I'm going to leave you with two things. I'm going to do this and one more thing. This, again, is quoted in Stephen Jeffries' book, but it is a quote from the writer Roy Williams, who says that Stephen told him this, and he does this for every play. Roy Williams is possibly was one of my favourite playwrights, but for various reasons. But he's a very well-regarded working playwright. Something is about something. You want something, but something. Sounds a bit daft. I'll run through the ABC indeed and then give you an example. Fill in the somethings with the play's title, the name of your protagonist, their goal in life, and what is stopping them from achieving it. Yeah? Romeo and Juliet is about two teenagers who want to fall in love, but their families hate each other. Yeah? Hamlet is about Hamlet, who wants revenge, but has to kill his uncle. Toy Story is about, I'm going to get this wrong. Which one goes missing? Is it Buzz or Woody? Woody. Woody goes, yeah, there you go. So Toy Story is about Woody, who wants to be reunited, but is lost. So Roy Williams, the writer, Roy Williams, and this is in Stephen Jeffries' book. It's one of the appendices in the back. And I'm going to leave you with those three books. I would argue.
No, I have that. Don't realise I know Stephen Jeffries.
Oh, there you go. Visual learner. Those three books, I would argue, are three books that if you have a birthday coming up, or if it's Eid or Hanukkah or Christmas or Easter, whatever, ask someone to buy these for you. Or get them secondhand from a retailer that hopefully isn't Amazon, but you do you. Stephen Jeffries, I have spoken about quite a bit. Brilliant playwright. Second book is Into the Woods by local John York. John York used to be the exec producer of EastEnders. I believe he was also on the exec producer team of Casualty at one point. Yeah. That book is mostly focused on screenwriting, so writing for TV, writing for film. But it gives absolute concrete ways into structure and an understanding of structure. And the last book is a relatively new book by Dermot Daly, who is a prolific radio drama writer. He is also a professor of theatre or contemporary theatre at Royal Holloway, and also is just a nice guy. But it's a relatively thin book. I think it's less than 100 pages, and it covers so much in so little. It's a book to put in your back pocket for those short train journeys. It doesn't take too much of your brain, but it allows you to think about things in a really clear way. But of those three, if you can get hold of that Stephen Jeffries book, honestly, it is a treasure trove. That is an MA in a book, as far as I'm concerned. It's a book that I constantly go back to. We've run over time a little bit. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, folk on Zoom, but you're nearer to your own kettles than people here. Any quick questions before we wrap up and call it a day?
When are you doing another one?
Oh, another masterclass.
Oh,
Dermot, yeah.
Oh,
When do you follow up?
Let's talk. Let's discuss.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dermot. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you everyone on Zoom. It's been brilliant session, and I hope you've all come away with a sort of an idea. Brilliant. Thank you very much.